Hey, I'm Alex, and this is Babe, We Need to Talk. And today we're going to be talking starting something new, obeying God's commands, stuff like that. Very exciting. I have no idea how to start these things, and I am trying really hard to get over that, and I don't know how to end them either. So thanks for being here, is the main thing I want to say. A little bit about me. I am 30 something years old, mom of 4, married to the most amazing man. We'll be married 14 years in March. I almost said February, which is very wrong. Don't tell him that. And I found Jesus at age 20 something. So like 11 years ago ish, maybe a little bit more than that. And I always kind of knew like knew of Jesus, but I didn't know Jesus. Do you know what I mean? And my walk with God has been very rocky. And recently I dropped a lot at his feet, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of pain, anxiety. And since then, I've just really been more intentional about doing what he says when he says to do it, for the most part, a few fits here and there. And that is why we are here talking today, is because God told me to, and I am nervous. I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie to you, but this is something that I feel like God has been telling me to do for a while. So here we are doing it. I started it as just like little 5-minute videos, and now we're going to try a little bit more than that and see how it goes. But one thing I wanted to talk about is listening to God and kind of how to hear his voice also, maybe a little bit. I don't know. We'll kind of see where this takes us, to be honest with you. But we're starting it. So welcome to episode 1 of the Babe We Need to Talk podcast. That's so scary. I don't know why it's scary, but it is. Like, does the world need another podcast? Probably not, but here we are trying it. So I really hope I hit record. There's no one here to check it for me. Anyways, a few months ago, God told me to close my small business that I had had for 8.5 years. And it was a business that its whole purpose was to glorify God through t-shirts, mugs, clothing, accessories, journals, Bible tabs, etc., etc., etc. So I was very much confused and wondering, God, why would you want me to close this when it's supposed to glorify you? And he gave me this very vivid picture. I don't know how you hear from God. I'm not you. We all hear from God differently. I think that he's so unique in that way, that he speaks to us and talks to us in the way that like we understand, like through how we can, like people learn differently. There's auditory learners, visual learners. You got to do it to learn those, all the different things. I don't know. I'm not a teacher, but I think that God works the same way with us to help us learn from him. But anyways, God gave me this vision of me holding so tightly onto something, which in this vision was the shop, had me holding so tightly onto something, and he was just saying, let go and let me do. Let go and let me do what I need to do. And so I finally decided to do that and just kept following his steps beyond that. And the hard part about it, to be completely honest, was people asking me, so what's next? What are you doing next? What's next? Why did you do that? Okay, one, this economy sucks. Like, the wholesale prices are now retail prices. So that's why everything's going up. Okay, guys, it sucks. This economy sucks. But that's not a political statement. So don't even start. But this economy sucks. Okay, so that was one of the reasons, is it was just, it was not profitable at all. Well, it was profitable some, but like not enough to make the stress of it worth it, and the grind of it, I guess. People really expect like Amazon delivery, um, and that's just really difficult for small businesses. So all that to say, if you know a small business owner, you need to hug them, and you probably should buy them a cup of coffee, because they are stressing. Oh my gosh, how horrible would it be if I had lipstick on my teeth this whole time? I'm gonna look. We're good. We're good, guys. We're good. Anyways, after God told me to close the shop and I listened, I kind of dove more heavily into my Bible during all of that time. Like I said, about June, July is when God like really met me again and kind of pulled me out of a pit. that I had been in for a very long time, and I will say probably years. But he's such a good God that he's like, hey, no time has passed. He's like the bestie that you've had since forever. And you may not like see each other for a while, or you may not talk to them for a little bit, but then you go to eat chips and salsa, and it's like no time has ever passed. And God is just so good like that. But after him just like pulling me out of that pit this summer, I started to really just like, as soon as it's like I craved him, I craved the Bible, just like more of it. And my prayer over and over again was to strip out the desires of my heart and replace it with anything that he had for me. And one of those things was the shop. He just very slowly stripped it, the desire for it. And then that way, when I heard him say, close it, like it's time, I was able to do it. So I'm really grateful that we do have a God like that, and that he does just, answer the prayers that we ask. But he's just good like that. But during all of that, he also told me to start a new account and gave me a name and gave me topics to talk about and this and that and some other things, some other like little projects that I've got going on. I've just tried to really listen to him. And then one of the things that my husband and I both thought he was telling me to do is just do this in podcast form. And I don't know anything about that other than I listen to podcasts and I like them, but I don't know what I'm doing, is what I'm trying to say, but I'm just listening to God and doing what he tells me to do. So this is the first episode, and that's where we are. I don't know, but if you don't know Jesus, I hope that you stumble across this podcast. And if you do know Jesus, I hope you stumble across this podcast, and maybe he has something for you that will help you the same way he has helped. I know I'm not the only person who has struggled with the things that I've struggled with. And when God was telling me to start this podcast, I will say, I'm not going to lie to you, I definitely like did some delayed obedience with it. I got really excited. Well, first I got really scared. It's kind of like, have you seen Tangled, when Rapunzel comes out and she's like really, really excited, and then she's like, no, this is actually horrible, and then she's like, no, I'm really excited, and she does that for a while Flynn Rider, which is by far the best Disney male lead of all time, is just sitting there like, do you know what I mean? So that's how I felt. And I felt like I got confirmation over and over and over again to go ahead and do this. And then one day I felt like, I guess, an imposter, or like I'm playing pretend or something. And I told my husband, like, I don't even know what the point is. Nobody's going to listen to it anyway, so I don't know what the point would be. And as soon as I said that, it was almost like God taped my mouth shut and put a thought in my head. It's all for my glory. It does not matter who sees it. It's for my glory. You're doing it because I told you to. So here we are. We're doing it. And I have some notes in front of me because I might have ADHD. I don't think I do. I might. I don't know. I have one of those brains that just goes in all the places all the time. And so I don't even know where to start in the Bible for us, but I have it here. And just for future reference and for now reference, I guess, I study the ESV version. This is a reminder. Put dinner in the crock pot. Alexa, remind me in 30 minutes. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Anyways, this is my Bible, and this is my lifeline. I read from the ESV version, so anything I read on this podcast will come from this Bible and this version of the Bible. I have a journaling Bible, so I can write on all of the pages that I want to write on, and I highlight my Bible. I very much believe in studying the Bible, not just reading the Bible. And so, in my opinion, you can write in this holy document and highlight it and write in it and study it and learn it. And if you don't agree with that, I'm really sorry. Don't do it in yours then. Do you know what I mean? But this is what we will be reading out of. anytime I open it up and read anything. So just for reference, I got this at Mardell, but they have it online and I can totally link it below, but that's not really what this podcast is about. Not about really buying things, but it's more about strengthening your relationship with God. So I will share the things that I use to do that, but you don't have to go buy it. You can do it how you want to do it because, like I said earlier, God talks to us all in different ways. So anyways, this is the Bible I use. I am also a huge note taker and tab user, okay? And I highlight and pins and stickers and all the things because, like I said, I owned a small business and crafting is just like deep inside of me. I wish I didn't say it like that, but I did. So crafting is just really deep inside of me. And because of that, I just want things to be pretty, okay? And I just feel like I learn well with that. So anyways, this is our setup usually. And oh, do y'all like my new wall? I painted it, not for the podcast, for my family. But anyway, welcome to BWNTT, where we just are very random. And I'm going to try not to hit this mic a lot. This is all I have. The whole closing the small business thing, I don't have the money to get all the podcast equipment. So we're starting with what we have because that's what my husband told me to do. And he's the leader of our family. And so I'm just starting with what I have. And this is this. And I do feel like big mic, small mic, no mic, God can still be glorified. And even if this is just for his glory or just for the one, I just want to be obedient to God. So that's what I'm going to do. But can we talk about really quick how hard it can be to be obedient to God? Okay, first, to be obedient to God, you have to be able to hear his voice. And to be able to hear his voice, you have to be near him. And while I completely believe that God can save anyone from anywhere with an open heart, I also believe that we need to do the work too to hear God's voice. You have to know him. And to know him, you have to want to develop that relationship with him. And I do completely believe that God can take anyone from anywhere out of the miry pit. I also think it's important for us to do our part. We can't just be, what's the word I want to use? We can't just be passive in our walk with God. We have to be involved. And so to be able to obey God, you have to be able to hear God. And we hear God in different ways, like I said before, but you're going to know that it's God if you're reading his word. So if you aren't currently in your Bible, I super encourage you to do that, especially if you are somebody that's just looking for God's plan for your life and maybe you think that you're not going to get that from the Bible. You are. Because maybe you think that, like, back in Genesis, when they were building arks and buying wives, it's not going to apply to you, but everything in here can apply to you and help you. So I really encourage you to start somewhere. Where I would start, if you're asking me, which if you're here, I assume you are, is in the Gospels. A lot of people say to start in John. I think John is an amazing book of the Bible, but I would start in all the Gospels. And you can also start at Genesis. Things get crazy quick, though, in that book. They get real crazy real quick. So, but it's a good place to start. And then I started reading Acts recently, and it was just stressing me out a little bit. And so I also encourage you to go through like Proverbs and Psalms. They say a Proverbs a day keeps the devil away, which maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I don't know, but you should try it. This is all over the place, and I'm so sorry. But anyways, to be obedient to God, you have to be able to hear God. So if you are not hearing God right now, I challenge you a little bit to look at your daily life and see what you're intaking. Are you reading the Bible? What are you listening to? Because there are some things we shouldn't be listening to, that can block the voice of God. What are you watching? What are you reading? What are you intaking? Instead of guarding your heart and guarding your mind, what exactly, what are you letting in that you shouldn't be letting in, That would be my first suggestion, is to spend some time with him, just a little bit every day. And I think there's like maybe a narrative that this Bible is very boring and unapplicable, but no, there's some really crazy stuff in here. It's like way better than reality TV, you know? So I encourage you to open your Bible and to talk back to Him. Any relationship that you have that you want to grow and be fruitful is not just one sided. So it's not just you hearing and listening and reading, but talking to God also. And we do that through prayer, we do that through worship. And so those are the two ways that you can talk to God and tell Him your concerns and your worries and your heart's desires, and just communicate with Him throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be this like perfectly done prayer, perfectly said, perfectly just tied with a bow. It doesn't have to be any of that. He just wants you to talk to Him. He just wants your heart. He just wants your attention. So, and have y'all been out there lately? There's a lot of distractions. Okay, you've been in your little device. Oh, my friend messaged me. See, no, we're gonna get distracted. We're gonna put that down, because that's what the devil wants us just to be distracted. So, and I really think that. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, being obedient to God. So to be obedient to God, you really have to hear Him, and to be able to listen for Him, you have to know Him, and to know Him, you have to have a open communication going on back and forth with Him. And I think that one of the ways I've explained it easily to like my kids and to myself when I forget, and to some friends, is, hey, you may be asking yourself, how do I know that God is telling me to do something? And I think there's a few ways. Does it align with His word? You need to ask yourself that. Like, whatever you think you're hearing from God, does it align with His word? And two, take it to Him. Ask Him, hey God, I have this thought. Is it from you? And He will answer you. There is that dialogue back and forth. But I think one way to tell is, does it align with the world or your flesh? Because if it does, then it's probably not from Him. And you just need to practice your discernment on that. A lot of the times the way I will know it's God is I'll have a thought that I'm like, well, that doesn't really sound like me now, does it? I'll have a thought that doesn't really sound like my flesh, and it kind of goes against what I would think that I would want. And I generally know that that's from God. But one thing that I heard actually on a podcast was Christine Kane, and she was like, so go for it and try it. If you think it's something from God, go for it and try it. And if not, just be like, all right, my bad, and come on back. And God's going to give you that grace. And as long as you're not doing anything that goes completely against His word, there's really no harm in that. And just like the trial and error of all of it. Oh, here we go. One thing that I was actually reading today, because, okay, let's back it up. I kept thinking that I was hearing God to start this, and I got confirmation from a few different ways. And I think that God knows that I need that I can't just have a like one-time confirmation, because then I'm like, well, that's just a coincidence. And I mean, all in one day, He confirmed like 5 times. Okay. And I was like, God, you're just so good. And then pretty soon after that, like, I started taking steps towards this. And then once I like got things kind of together and a sort of my ducks in a row, which may not seem like I do have my ducks in a row because this is all over the place, but just stay with me. I started doubting pretty good. And I read like one thing about how women should basically not spread the word of Jesus, which is not accurate. And we will get into that another day, but not today. No, not today. We're not doing that today. Bring it in. Anyways, and it got me thinking how quickly we latch on to like one negative thing that's telling us that maybe we shouldn't do something. Meanwhile, we've had 10 confirmations that we are going in the right direction, that God wants us, but then that one negative thing kind of pulls us back. And I kind of took that to God and was like, why am I like this? Will you please fix me? And He brought me to Philippians 4. And again, this is ESV, okay, but we are going to read the Bible. Philippians 4. I just love our Jesus so much. So this is a letter, if you don't know, okay? Because you don't know until you know things. Do you know what I'm saying? But this is a letter to the Philippians from Paul while he's in prison. Okay. And he says, I just love him so much. In chapter 4, verse 6, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. And here's verse 8 is where what he like immediately brought to my mind, but the before and after is so good too. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things. We're going to get to that in a second. And the God of peace will be with you. I love so much that Paul says in here, practice these things. Because when we think about like the transformation that we have after we accept Jesus into our heart, I think sometimes Christians, well-meaning, we are, but sometimes we just miss the mark, right? We almost put off this narrative that you accept Jesus into your heart and your life's great and it's all sunshine and rainbows and butterflies and fabulousness. And while life is so much better with Jesus, we are never promised that there won't be bad things. And so here he's just reminding us to kind of fix our eyes and our minds and think about things that are true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, excellence, anything worthy of praise. Think about these things. And then in the next verse, he says, practice these things and the God of peace will be with you. Well, he says practice because he knows we're not perfect. He knows how flawed we are. And when you think about, so like, for example, my son plays a sport and he has to practice that sport to be good at it. He's not just overnight good because he decides that he loves this thing. Like you woke up and you decided you love Jesus. That doesn't make you perfect. All of your old flaws, they're still in there. And Jesus wants to work them out, but in order to work them out, he may have to bring some of it to the surface and help you practice how to combat that. So for me, I'm just going to use me because I know me. I am prone to anxiety. And so sometimes that he brings that out. Like with me starting this, he brought that out in me and he wants to bring it up so he can bring it out. Does that make sense? I don't know if what I'm saying makes sense, but he wants us to practice these things. So I want to encourage you that if you are struggling with that or struggling with hearing God, talking to God, any of that, you don't have to be perfect today. In fact, you're never going to be perfect until you are brought to just to the right hand of Jesus. You're never going to be perfect until you're brought into heaven where everything is perfect. But we are called to practice these things and the God of peace will be with you. It does not say perfect these things and the God of peace will be with you. It says practice these things and the God of peace will be with you. Okay? God, I love Paul. I love his letters. They're so good. Okay, and then we're going to skip to verse 11. He says, not that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Okay, so this is even showing that Paul has had to learn in whatever situation to be content. So I'm just saying we don't have to be perfect. And I think that we want to cling on to the negative things because sometimes, if we're being completely honest, that's an easy out. We can be like, oh no, I'm not supposed to do this. Sometimes the loudest voice is the enemy. Sometimes the loudest voice is the person that likes you the least, which is the enemy, just by the way. Not that he's a person, but you know what I mean. Is the thing that likes you the least. And sometimes it's easier to just cling on to the negative thought and think, I can't do it. And that's a lot easier because it's a lot harder to step out in faith and obey God and do that one thing because you don't really know what that next thing is. And there can be this like weariness almost that comes with it of, okay, well, now that I started this thing and I obeyed God, I have to actually like step out into it. And it's terrifying. And if you have been walking with Christ for any amount of time, you also know that when you do take a big step of leap or a big leap of faith into whatever God's calling you to, it gives the enemy just room almost. Like he gets so angry about it and he wants to stop you. So we're not letting that happen today. And we are going to combat that together. And we are going to think about whatever is true, honorable, just, pure, lovely, commendable, and anything worthy of praise. And we're going to practice that even when it's hard, and even when we're terrified, and even when we feel imposter syndrome or whatever else we want to call it these days. What's Gen Z and Gen Alpha saying these days? Who knows? 6, 7. Okay, anyways. But thank you for coming to the first episode of Babe, We Need to Talk. I'm going to go ahead and land it home because I feel like this was all over the place. I want to assure you that I'm going to figure this out, but I just needed a test run of an episode. So we'll see what's next. There's a lot of things I want to talk about and a lot of things I want to share. And I do think that I need to be more organized with it. But today was a day that God kind of said, just go do it. And we'll figure out what's next together. So that's what I did. Thanks for coming to Babe, We Need to Talk. Go out, be a light, and guard your hearts and minds. Love you.